Hi, I'm Beth with American Patchwork and Quilting, and today I'm sharing tips for finishing your Bright New Day Block of the Month quilt. You'll find the link to the free finishing instructions in the video description. First up, we'll talk about the stars and the sashing. So this quilt has 24 of these adorable little stars. This is a great way to use up all those little pieces left over from the rest of your blocks because the pieces are pretty small. The stars are definitely time-consuming though, so if you're looking to finish a little faster, you could definitely swap out a different, simpler 4.5-inch square block or just a plain fabric or something like a feature fabric. I thought this stitch star fabric would be a nice swap. Another option is to make maybe just 4 of the stars, and you can put those in the corners of your quilt and then use a solid or a different fabric for the interior. That will save you some time. But it's really up to you how you customize your quilt. I've laid out my block, sashing, and star, and now I'm going to start sewing these together in rows. I'm using just 4 blocks today because it's easier to show, but this is also a great idea. If you decide you aren't going to finish the whole block of the month, you could make a smaller project like this would be a great table topper size. Or you could take 4 or 5 of your favorite blocks and put them together in a table runner. So just some other ideas for putting those together if you don't need or want to do a whole quilt. When I'm sewing my blocks to my sashing, I like to keep my pieced blocks on top. So both the small stars and the larger blocks. I want to keep those on top so that I can watch this seam as I'm sewing and I'm not going to cut off my points. This is a great time to use the laser light if you have one. This Husqvarna Viking Epic 95Q does, and I love using it for this purpose because even before I start my seam, I can see that I'm not going to get too far into that seam and have a blunted point. Once I go to join the rows, I like to start in the center pinning. So I want to make sure that sashing and that star line up really well. So I start pinning in the center and then go out from there. I have my blocks assembled, but I did want to point out that sometimes your point is just too close to the edge of your block and it's going to get cut off no matter what you do. So I like to watch out for it, but in the overall quilt, it's not that noticeable when you're missing 1 or 2 points. Once you have your blocks, sashing, and stars assembled, it's time to add the borders. It's always a good idea to wait to cut your borders until your quilt top is assembled. Any variations in seam allowance can change the size of your quilt top, so if you just cut them to the size the pattern specifies, they may be too short or too long. I want to show you how to properly measure for your borders. So take a tape measure and first measure through the center of your quilt, and we're doing the long way first, 28 1/8, and then you want to do the side, the long side, first long side, 28 1/8, okay. And then our third measurement is a little short, we're at 28. Now I often find that is the case that they are not the same. So what you want to do is take the average of the 3 numbers and cut both your borders to that size. So in this case it would be 28 1/16. I've cut both my borders to the 28 1/16 inch measurement, and you can see this side is a little bit short and this side's a little bit long, so we'll need to ease that difference in on each side. So what you need to do is find the center of both the quilt top and the border. Easiest way to do that is just fold in half and finger press, or you could mark it with a pin, and then line up your centers. So then you'll want to pin the center and then pin the ends, and this is going to be a little bit short, so you just want to line up the ends and then pin that. If it's a big difference, you might want to do a little bit more pinning to try to kind of help ease that in a little bit more. Whichever side is longer, you want to put that side towards the bed of your machine, so the feed dogs will pull the longer side through just a little bit faster and help ease that difference in. Add the other border in the same way. This time the border is longer, so that's going to be on the bed of the machine toward the feed dogs. Once you've added the 2 side borders, do the same thing to add the top and bottom. So this quilt has 3 borders, so you'll want to do that each time you're adding another row of borders. And adding them in this way helps to square up your quilt and avoid wavy borders. Here's my completed quilt top. I love how this turned out. Now I just need to decide how to quilt it. I asked Handy Quilter Studio educators Kelly Ashton and Kim Sandberg for some tips on quilting a block of the month quilt. Because all the blocks are different, it can be hard to decide what motifs to quilt. Kim suggests an edge-to-edge design for a simple approach. You can see on this one I quilted an all-over free motion swirl. And it gives really nice texture and lets the piecing be the star of the quilt. She also suggests using a lighter weight thread that will blend in with all the colors of the quilt. So I used a pale pink on this one, which worked very well. How do you choose a thread color? Well, I like to preview them on my quilt top. So take your spools that you're considering, pull one strand across the quilt top, and then you can see what that's going to look like on different sections of your quilt top. So you can see that the medium blue here really blends in nicely with the border, but it's going to stand out a lot on the background fabric. The opposite is true of the lighter colors, so those are going to stand out more on the border and blend in with the background. So you just have to decide which parts you want to feature and which you might want to blend in more, unless you're going to change colors throughout your quilt top, which you could do also. If you're going to choose multiple designs, Kelly and Kim both agree that choosing maybe 2 to 5 basic quilting designs and then repeating those throughout the blocks will give your quilt some continuity. You can change the size and densities to create cohesion, but give it a little variety. So I did some circles in the small part of the sashing, and now I'm going to do some smaller ones in the background of this block. And keep in mind, when you're densely quilting like this, that's going to really flatten that part of the quilt out, and then my design is going to puff up. So it can be a really fun way to accent those block designs. I really like to use these back and forth lines as a quick fill, and they work great in triangles. Straight line quilting or some simple echoing around the block shapes always looks good as well, and that can be done on your domestic sewing machine. We have a ton of quilting videos for inspiration and how-to on our website, so go to allpeoplequilt.com and search machine quilting and you'll find those. We also have them on our YouTube channel, American Patchwork and Quilting, and it's the Machine Quilting Videos playlist. We can't wait to see your finished quilts. Share them with us in our Facebook group or on Instagram with the hashtag APQBOM2021. Thanks so much for participating in our Bright New Day Block of the Month.